Thank you for being part of this webinar, hosted by Greenbook and brought to you by Dappersea. Today's session is entitled, How to Transform Market Research Reports into State-of-the-Art Dashboards. The speaker for today is Alexander Skorka. As a Chief Evangelist for Dappersea, Alexander is highly experienced in the market research industry and is an expert in information visualization and delivery. He has a passion for showing customers how they can maximize the benefits of Dappersea's product portfolio and how they can take full advantage of extracted insights. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items. The webinar will last 1 hour, including time for questions. If you are on mute, you can submit questions through the chat box marked moderator. Finally, the webinar recording will be made available to you within 1 week. And now I would like to hand it over to Alexander.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for the introduction and welcome everyone to this webinar. I would like to start for a second with just introducing Dappersea on one slide so that you know a little bit more about our company. We are one of the leading companies in the business intelligence or dashboards industry. We are on average growing at 30%. We have offices around the world, currently in 8 locations, and we have 60 employees. Our software is used for more than 14,000 dashboard projects, and more than 1,700 enterprises are using our software. And as you can see, we're working for brands, but also market research industries, so everyone who wants to visualize market research information, data in the best way, and wants to create a very, very efficient and effective communication based on market research data. So when we start with the discussion about how to create a state-of-the-art dashboard, I think it's a good question to ask first, what is a dashboard? If you type in dashboard in Google, you get a lot of pictures, as you can see here, and of course, if you go into Wikipedia, you will see that dashboard is basically defined as a at-a-glance view on KPIs. But unfortunately, today, the term is used much broader than just at-a-glance view. So this is why I would like for today define it in the most broadest way, and saying dashboards provide an ability to engage with data in an interactive and visual way. Because when I discuss with customers, it's quite essential to get first a common understanding of what the dashboard is all about. And this is also the purpose of this webinar. I would like to introduce 4 fundamental concepts you can consider if you want to create dashboards. And of course, there are variations of those 4 fundamental concepts, but those 4 is good to know, because then you can already in a very early stage discuss with your customer or with your users what they would like to see. So, but of course, when we talk about engaging, the key question is, what does engaging with data look like today, and are there any best practices or a step-by-step instruction we can use to get to a compelling and state-of-the-art dashboard? And to illustrate the process in a better way, I would like to introduce a company called FlyNOW. This company is an exclusive charter service company, so you can charter airplanes so that you can take any route you prefer. Of course, they have mainly B2B customers, and as a good company, you always do market research, and in this case, they run 2 big programs. So one is a customer experience satisfaction survey, which is a monthly tracking with 2,300 interviews per month in 23 countries. They ask critical metrics about overall satisfaction, NPS, loyalty. They, of course, measure the touch points, which are grouped into processes like booking, services, and complaint handling. They have, of course, different customer segments to look at, and last but not least, they also look at the landscape. And in addition, and that's always helpful, of course, they also ask employees to give feedback so that they understand the satisfaction. And again, which is maybe a little bit uncommon, they also do a monthly pulse survey in all the 23 countries. just to get a better understanding of the current situation and, of course, the personal development. And until today, they receive all the information that is gathered every month by PowerPoint reports. So they get a PowerPoint report for customer experience, and they get one for the employee satisfaction survey for each country, and of course they also for the global management get a global report that mainly provides cross-country information. So, and that is our customer, and of course now it's up to us to consider how could you create a dashboard for this company to move away from the creation of reports to a dashboard concept that provides, of course, value to the entire organization of FlyNOW. I would like to introduce 4 steps for this webinar. I'm just taking care of the first 3. The first one will be about list and rank relevant metrics. The second one will be list and rank related entities. And that is maybe a little bit more administrative and might be a little bit more, so to say, boring and not really related to dashboards in the beginning. But believe me, it is the right 2 steps to start with, to lay the right foundation to understand the different concepts of dashboards. So, and the last one, of course, is about fine-tuning. And as mentioned, I don't want to do any discussions about fine-tuning today due to the time restrictions, of course. That might be a topic for one of our next webinars. But basically, fine-tuning means, of course, discussing what kind of chart types to use, what kind of visuals to use, what kind of colors to use, etc., etc. So I would like to focus on the first 3, and of course mainly on the third one, which introduced the 4 fundamental steps, concepts of dashboarding. So let's start with the first one, and I think it's always a good idea if you just go through the existing report and just list all the metrics you find. In this case, we see we have overall satisfaction, then the satisfaction items per touch point. We have, of course, comments, repurchase questions, cross-buying questions, recommendation, NPS, emotional bonding, and loyalty. So that's the entire list of measures. And as a next step, it's essential to consider what are the most important measures and to divide those measures into 3 buckets. One is the KPI bucket, one is the PI bucket, and one is the I bucket. KPIs should be those who are really strategic. Normally it's just a handful of KPIs, so between 5 and maybe 15 max, and it's more strategical, as said. And the performance indicators are more the operational information, and so it's also the indicators and information which is the most operational information. And for our case, we consider to divide them into 3 different buckets. And what we do is first we have overall satisfaction, NPS, and loyalty decided to be the KPI, and then we have basically the rest as performance indicators, and the comments, which are the open-end questions regarding the satisfaction with specific touch points as indicators or information. So that's the first step you should do. I know that it sometimes sounds strange or looks strange, but especially when you have a bigger project with much more measures to cover, it is a good first understanding of the scope of information you would like to provide at the end via the dashboard. As a next step, you have to list and rank the rated entities. Entities are divided into 5 groups. You can, of course, rate geographical entities like regions, countries, districts, or stores. So, for instance, you can ask the overall satisfaction for a specific country or for a specific store. You have brand-related entities, like you can ask about categories, brand categories, brands or sub-brands, or even SKUs. You can have, of course, customer-related entities asking for specific customer segments or social demographics. You can ask for specific channels, so how is the performance in TV, print, online, or for a specific provider. And last but not least, of course, you can measure campaigns like umbrella campaigns or single ads. And it's also good just to consider a hierarchy here. So first the groups, but also within each group to define a hierarchy. And I will let you know in a second why the hierarchies are so important. But basically, in most cases, you start with a global view, splitting into countries, and within a country, you might want to split into brands. Within the brand, you split into customer segments. Within the customer segments, you ask yourself, which channels do I use to address those customer segments? And last but not least, of course, you decide on which ad should be shown in the respective channel. So this is why those hierarchies are quite helpful. And there's a sixth one, which is normally included in all the five, which I want to have as a separate category, which is touch points, because touch points are getting more and more important. This is why you should always have a separate category of touch points. And if we do that, we get into back to our table where we now have added those categories of entities. And as you can see, the first one is now the countries, then the brand, and we have the traveler type, the customer class, and the organizational size, and last but not least, in the end, we have the touch points. And this is something which is quite helpful because in the end, it's a good starting point to understand the drill down concept of the dashboard. Because normally you should go, of course, from the most relevant information to the more operational information. So meaning you might want to follow, of course, the drill down from overall satisfaction into satisfaction with items, into the comments regarding those items. Or you want to drill down from a country level into the brand level into the customer segment level. And this is why this table is quite helpful in the beginning to set up. And if you look in detail at this table, it's basically like a very, very big cross-tab you normally do when preparing your reports. So in the rows, you have all your questions, and on the top, you have all the splits you want to show. And in this case, you have the geographical split, the brand split, et cetera, et cetera. But in addition, it's always good to also discuss with the users in the end what kind of information is required for them. And for instance, this global CEO might be just interested in a cross-country view for the KPIs, so overall satisfaction, NPS, and loyalty. And he's mainly interested just in observing the information, so just monitoring and maybe understanding the development, or are we doing better or worse. Another role might be, for instance, someone like a country brand manager who wants to, of course, look at his brand, but only for a specific country. And of course, he wants to see more details, and maybe he even wants to go into more details. So he wants maybe to see his brand, how the brand is performing in a specific traveler type segment or in a specific customer segment. So that is, for instance, one additional role you can see. As a third step, you could also have someone who is responsible for the frequent traveler program and wants to see the, of course, this metrics first. And maybe if he's a global player, you have to sort the entities in a different way, because he might want to start with the traveler type first and then want to split into the countries and then maybe into the brand, or vice versa. So and this table helps you very well to understand what is most important first to look at, and then to understand what additional splits and drill downs are required to get a better picture of the current situation. And last but not least, we have, of course, also someone who is maybe a market researcher and who would like to basically look from a measure perspective on the entire data. So for the first 3 rows, we had basically the entity in mind. So discussing, okay, I have a country, or I have a brand, or I have a customer segment, and I want to understand how this specific entity is performing. Now we look at the same data from a measure perspective, and we might want to understand how overall satisfaction and NPS is correlating and how the different countries are performing, and then trying to gain insights based on this view. So these are the most, or this is a foundation for our concepts, to get a better understanding at the end of what dashboard type to use for each of those cases. And I would like now to introduce the 4 dashboard concepts, which are very, very common. And I want to go through them, show you examples, and in the end, of course, also summarize and compare all of those different concepts so that you can hopefully make a good choice for your next dashboard project. So the 4 different concepts I would like to share with you is, on the one hand, a KPI dashboard, reporting dashboards, data discovery dashboards, and guided analytics dashboards. So the first thing is the KPI dashboards. KPI dashboards, as said, is per definition a regular and quick overview of the actual performance, showing most relevant metrics. So looking at our pyramid of information, we are basically focusing just on the top of the pyramid. So we just want to show this kind of information, and it's pretty obvious that in the end, a dashboard is basically a one-pager. And that is, per definition, the original dashboard, so the at-a-glance view of KPIs. Let's look at the typical target group. So in this case, it's the global CEO, and he just wants to have a good view of overall satisfaction, NPS, and loyalty. And looking at the dashboard, we can see that we see the Net Promoter Score, we see the loyalty index, we see overall satisfaction, we see some split into the NPS categories, so loyalty segments, and maybe the 3 big touchpoint processes. And of course, we do benchmarking and compare with competition. And what makes this dashboard, of course, very, very successful is that it's a very, very fast and quick view of the most relevant information. And you can, of course, use different filters, like in this case, a country filter, but also the customer-related filters to get different perspectives. So like, it's now easy to switch between US and UK or Germany. You can go into specific customer segments to get a better understanding of how those segments are performing. When we look at what is good and what might be not the perfect match for this dashboard concept, we see, of course, the primary way of working with data is just to observe data. There's no real interaction with the data. You basically get what you see, and you can, of course, apply filters to observe different units or different segments, but that's it. But since it's so simple, it's, of course, suitable for a wider, unexperienced audience. It allows the big picture, because it's about the big picture. It has not really an operational value, just to some extent, and because it doesn't really provide you so many whys. So if the loyalty index, for instance, drop, then there is no real understanding or no real hint you can gain from the dashboard understanding why that happens. You cannot reveal at all any undiscovered coherencies because it's just a one-pager, it's just those measures. There's no ability to correlate measures, etc., etc. So that is very, very limited, but in the end, of course, the speed to usage, so the time needed to set it up is very, very fast since it's just a one-pager. So this is, I would say, the mother of dashboards. And the most simple one. In many cases, you can use this kind of KPI dashboard in combination with your report. So it's a good starting point for all the dashboard work you're planning to do in the future, because you can start with a dashboard providing the entire organization with information, and on the other hand, of course, provide then a lot of details in your reports. And then step by step, you increase the scope of your KPI dashboard, as we will see in the end, and then extend the dashboard and cover more and more of the aspects of your report. But especially for those companies or customers that are a little bit hesitating with using dashboards, I think it's a good and great starting point, because they get an update maybe every week, every day, or every month, and they see the most relevant information at a glance. And then, of course, if they're interested in more, they can go into the report and seek for specific information to get a better understanding of the why. So the next concept is the reporting part. So the reporting dashboard is basically something which is very, very similar to the PowerPoint reports you might produce today. So it organizes information. There's just a short question. Maybe we go just back to that one. So yes, as shown, we can, of course, have a lot of different filters on top we can use to slice and dice the data in more detail. So you can apply as many filters as you want. It's more up to the user. He, in the end, can cope with all those filters. So going back to the reporting dashboard, it basically organizes the entire information in a narrative and graphic form. And basically, it's also split in sections and headings. So when we look at our pyramid, it's basically a path through the entire information, and transforming that into a dashboard concept. It's basically, again, like, showing one slide after each other, navigating through the entire information. And of course, I don't have to explain you how to create a report. I think you are all experts in creating any kind of compelling and inspiring reports. So please don't criticize too much my approach. So I'm not the expert in creating reports. It's more the dashboards I do. But just to illustrate how a reporting dashboard could look like, well, for instance, you start with overall satisfaction, then you move on to satisfaction by touch point, and then you maybe go into Net Promoter Score, and so on and so on. The good thing with those dashboard reports, they are very, very similar for your existing users, because they are used to get reports. So there's no so much change they have to go through. So again, a very good starting point. You can, of course, apply again filters like a country filter or a customer class filter, so that you can replace 23 PowerPoint reports by just one reporting dashboard, which is, of course, much more efficient than producing all the reports, and which is, of course, better. You can apply additional filters again to slice and dive more into details and see the entire report, for instance, for your A-class customers. So this is a very, very common way of starting also with dashboards and basically creating an online presentation that can be used with filters, so that you can replace hundreds of PowerPoint reports by just one dashboard report. And just imagine how much time you save, especially when it comes to updates. You can easily, of course, import the data automatically, and within a minute, everyone has the latest state of the information. So, but what does it mean compared to the KPI dashboard? So basically, the primary way of working is explore and explain. means the explore part, I really have to go through the information in detail, step by step. So that's, of course, the explore part. But on the other hand, since I can have a narrative in my story, I also explain step by step how things can happen. It's normally not as good for really unexperienced audience because they might be overwhelmed by so much information. And in most cases, those reports don't really provide a big picture first, which is very, very essential for unexperienced users. It has, to some extent, operational value. I put that in brackets because, of course, it's very, very easy that you might miss something. I'm not sure why it's jumping back and forth. Sorry for that. So the operational value is that you really need a user that goes through all the details and identify these needs and the insights. What we cannot provide with this kind of dashboard concept is that we reveal undiscovered coherencies because, of course, it's, again, very limited to the slides you provide, to the information you provide, and the ability to, of course, apply filters. And, of course, the speed to usage is more time-consuming, so to say, or slower, because you have to create all those slides. But again, compared to a typical PowerPoint report, it's much more efficient. And looking at the typical user type, we see, of course, the KPI dashboard is C-level or field management, or people like store managers that love to have this very, very short and focused view on their performance, whereas the reporting dashboard is more for market researchers because it's a lot of details, or upper management like product managers that really want to get a deep and comprehensive understanding of their brand and invest into basically reading a report or reading a book and making their own conclusions. So let's move to something which is now totally different to what we have discussed so far, and I call them the data discovery dashboards. So data discovery dashboards basically provide, or data discovery is basically a user-driven process of searching for patterns or specific items in a data set. When we look at our pyramid of information, we see that basically a data discovery dashboard focuses on specific areas of the information and provides specific views on this information. And this is why a typical data discovery dashboard comes with different separate views on the data you can use to get a better understanding of the data. Which is also important for this kind of dashboard, that they think from the measure perspective. So it's the first alternative of the concept that really puts the measure first. So the KPI dashboard and the reporting dashboard normally puts the entity first. So it looks at a brand or country, whereas the data discovery dashboard looks at the data from a measure perspective. So let's go into an example of a typical data discovery dashboard. So this kind of data discovery dashboard is the most simple one. So we show a typical chart with all the countries. We can select up here our measure, like in this case, overall satisfaction, and we can use a lot of different filters like the country filter, the competitor filter, the customer class, traveler type, and organizational size filter. And we can now apply them in different ways. On the one hand, we can just filter the data. So for instance, if we select my brand, we see the countries as a split, but just the values for my brand. So FlyNOW in this case. But I also can, of course, select the filter as being a compare filter to make sure that I can, within one of the variables, can split the information. And I will do this now in an example. So I, just in a second, I
want to reduce the number of countries because 23 is quite overwhelming, especially if I want to apply a further split. And I would like to see the same information split now into two groups. One is a frequent traveler, and the other one is the occasional traveler. And as you can see, after applying those two filters, we see that on the one hand, the number of countries is reduced, so we only show 10 countries, but on the other hand, we now split the value into two and show in comparison the two traveler types. So that is a very, very basic concept of data discovery dashboards that is used. It's a good way to especially look up data and get a better understanding of the respective metrics. It's maybe not as good for unexperienced users, but we will summarize this in the end. So as a next, I'm not sure why it's jumping, sorry for that. So the next view is a view which provides you with overall satisfaction again, so you can choose the measure up here, and now you see that measure split into all different variables. So one is by country, one is the split by brands, one is the type of traveler, one is the customer class, organizational size, and touchpoint categories. So the good thing with that is you get a full picture of how overall satisfaction is performing across the world, across the brands, across the customer segments. And now, of course, you can decide on clicking on one element and drill down into further information, and now filter the rest of the dashboard by US. So what we now see, we have clicked on US, and now we see all the measures by brand, by traveler type, etc., filtered by US. And now, for instance, we could go one step further and filter and click on frequent travelers, and then, of course, get a better understanding of how my brand, for instance, is performing in US within the frequent traveler customer segment. So let's go into the next alternative of a dashboard that is related to data discovery. In this case, we want to see overall satisfaction versus an NPS. So we see a correlation where we see overall satisfaction on the x-axis and the NPS on the y-axis, and we see all the countries. And as we can see, it's pretty well correlated, which makes sense, of course, that the higher the overall satisfaction is, that should be also a high NPS related to that. And in addition, we see the performance for the touch points, traveler types again, organization size, and loyalty sequence. And now the way of working with data discovery dashboards is basically, I want to select one country. In this case, I select USA, and automatically the rest of the chart is filtered by this country. And what I see immediately now, how much US is deviating from total. And what we see is that catering and service jobs is maybe the highest exception compared to the total. And now, of course, I can start trying to figure out why catering is rated worse maybe compared to total. On the other hand, of course, I could also click on this country up here to see if what they do differently, because they have the same overall satisfaction, but a much higher NPS. So they seem to be very good in converting overall satisfaction into NPS. And it might be of interest to understand why this happened. On the other hand, I can go into this country just to identify what they might have to do in the future, because they have a very high overall satisfaction, but a very low NPS. And in the end, by analyzing those countries in more detail, I might get enough insights to understand what I have to do with all those countries down here to move them up the ladder. It's of course also possible to select 2 countries if that makes really sense. Sorry, it's again jumping. So in the end, it's more a question of does it make sense to select several countries? But yes, in a good data discovery dashboard, that is doable. In many cases, from my perspective, it wouldn't really make sense to do that because then you're merging maybe 2 different countries, which of course makes the result more fuzzy. So let's look into our summary. And the summary is basically that the verb of working is explore. Therefore, it's less suitable for a wider, unexperienced audience because they really have to understand how to work with data. They might be very easily lost in data. There might be a risk of misinterpretation. So you always have to be very careful in using data discovery dashboard, especially when it comes to a broader communication of information. Normally, you don't see any big picture first. The operational value is also less. Of course, in the end, you can create really great insights, but it might take long to gain them, so they are not obvious and you're not guided. So this is why operational value is less, especially when you have very, very frequent updates. It's very, very difficult to find the same insight again and again because you have to apply all the filtering again and again. But, of course, the strong upside of this kind of dashboard is that you can reveal undiscovered coherences because you can start playing around with the data. You can, of course, look at the data from different perspectives. And, of course, also the speed to usage is very, very easy because it's basically a more functional-driven dashboard to allow you just to engage in a very interactive and visual way with your data. But, as said, since you need a lot of experience, it's basically for the market researcher to find answers on demand than for the broad audience like C-levels or field managers like store managers that would be overwhelmed by this kind of functionality. And of course, there's a big risk of missing the point, meaning that let's assume you look at this part of the data with one of the views you have in your data discovery dashboard, and now you start investigating and you're just looking at the left part of the circle, and you might lose or you might miss to look at this critical part where maybe things happened during the last couple of weeks and which would need further investigation. So it's essential to understand that data discovery dashboards also need a lot of time from a user perspective to really go through all the specific information to work on this big picture to get a really understanding of the situation and what you could do to improve it. So last but not least, and I think that is something I strongly can recommend as a good dashboard, especially when it comes to converting a report into a dashboard concept. A guided analytics dashboard tries to solve what we just talked about, meaning that people might not understand where to look at first. They might run into misinterpretation. They might also be lost in data by applying too many filters and not knowing what kind of information they are really looking at the moment. And therefore, I think guidance is needed, especially when we want to roll out this dashboard to a broader audience outside the market researcher or business analytical world. So a guided analytic dashboard is basically that users are systematically guided from identifying abnormalities to determine their reasons. So the true cause of an issue. And that means when you look again on our information pyramid, that we provide different ways from the top to understanding, okay, I have an issue with my loyalty, and then drilling into more and more details step by step to get systematically a better understanding of the cause for maybe the drop in loyalty. Of course, it provides a lot of different passes into different details, but due to a traffic light system, you can, of course, alert people so that they understand I have an issue here, then they drill down into this area, then they understand, okay, I have an issue here, and so they can step by step drill down and are systematically really guided into the true cause of the issue. And a typical dashboard concept looks like that. So it's very similar to the pyramid. We start with the KPIs on the top, and then we provide more and more details, and we allow people to click on specific areas so that they can go into the next level of information and to add more insights. And then based on that knowledge, they can drill down into even more details. So let's look at this example. What we see here, and as you know, the FlyNOW company is a global player, so they have 23 countries around the world they serve, and of course they measure their KPIs, and the global CEO is just interested in those KPIs. So he looks at overall satisfaction, net promoter score, and the loyalty index, and he always sees three figures. Which is the first one is overall satisfaction, second one is the net promoter score, and the third one is loyalty. And we have added, as it's always good with all dashboards except data discovery because it's not applicable for data discovery dashboards, you can use a traffic light system where you can alert people directly that something is not going as planned, and therefore force them to take action and drill into this specific area. So what we see, Europe is doing pretty well. We have some issues in the Asia area, and we have a bigger issue in the US. So this is why I would like to look into US because it's a quite big business. So I would like to look into this one first. And I drilled into the US page where I see now the different indicators. So one is the overall satisfaction again, the loyalty, and NPS down here. And that's now about the power also of infographics. It shows the entire information in a flow, so that allows people to understand the cause and effect relationships. So on the left, we see the touch point results. So the satisfaction with a specific touch point. And of course, this satisfaction drives the overall satisfaction. Overall satisfaction, of course, drives things like emotional bonding, repurchase, cross buying, or recommendation. Recommendation, of course, drives NPS. And of course, all this in the end drives loyalty. So if I see that loyalty is dropping, I can easily, step by step, move back to the true cause of the issue. And what I see here is that the cause on this page is basically that my service performance dropped quite dramatically, so I should investigate this further. And that's about creating a good infographic that also tells a story, because users understand how things influence each other, what the impact of one indicator is on another indicator, and therefore can easily understand the whole picture and can also easily understand where to look at as a next step. So in this case, we click on the drill down area and go into the touch point performance, and we see all the touch points here now also again in a typical flow from booking, the booking process, so from visiting the website or calling the call center, by getting the proposal, by, of course, booking the service, Then this company provides a shuttle service that picks you up at home and takes you to the airport, the flight, the catering on board, and of course the service staff, which is of course taking care of all these three touch points. And then last but not least, there's a billing process and of course a complaint handling process that of course covers the entire chain from visiting the website to getting the bill. So, and as a next step, of course, I now see that my service staff is performing quite bad currently. So it's the primary atrophy I should take care of. So again, I can click on this area and drill down into the respective items and understand that basically they seem to be less service-oriented, less attentive. And for instance, they are also less flexible with the specific requirements of customers. And this is, of course, why customers rated the service quite bad. And what we can do now in addition to this, because that already provides us a lot of insight and a lot of action fields where we can start acting on. We can discuss how we can improve, of course, the service orientation. We can, of course, discuss how people can be more attentive or more flexible with regard to customer requirements. But we also could merge into this dashboard the results from the employee research, which we have done down here. And now what we see is that maybe the work-life balance in the last couple of months dropped dramatically. And the reason might be that some people left the company or the company grows more than expected, and therefore there is not enough staff available that can take care of all the customers, and therefore they can't invest so much time into every single customer, which in the end, of course, then reduces the satisfaction of our customers. So basically, this data analytics dashboard is a very, very good way to start on the top, providing a good overview across the organization to identify which, let's say, region, like country or which brand might be affected most. Then step by step drill into more information to get a better understanding of the causes, and it also provides or supports the entire organization. So in this case, the global management, of course, will basically have access to the cross-country view and can drill down into each country to get a better understanding of the KPIs of this country. The country manager will start, of course, on this level and then drill into the touch points or other sections like maybe repurchase or loyalty segments. And of course, maybe if he's he wants to work with data and does his own analytics, even maybe can go one step further and go into the respective touch points. And this level could be, in addition, also a good starting point, for instance, for a head of a call center or the head of the shuttle service or whatever, to get a good understanding of what kind of how this touch point is performing. So it provides for all levels in the organization the right view, the right amount of information, and therefore I think it's one of the best concepts, because we just have to consider there are more and more customers out there that are not attracted by data and analytics, but need information in a much faster way, more precise. They are less willing to invest a lot of time into going through hundreds of slides, drilling into hundreds of views. They want to, like spot on, finding the cause, where to act, and then move into action. Let's compare all four. So the guided analytics dashboard is basically about observing and explaining. So it starts with a KPI view, and then there are drill downs that explain in more detail why things happened. We see that it's very suitable for unexperienced audience because they are guided. So step by step, you are guided into the details. You see always the big picture first. Also, on every single organization level, it's always big picture first and then further drill downs. This is why it's also very, very high operational value included, meaning you can get to the true cause directly and start acting immediately. The downside is there's no way of revealing undiscovered coherencies because, of course, all the passes are predefined. And, of course, the speed to usage is low. So it takes quite a lot of time to, of course, discuss with all your users what their information needs is all about, and then define the views based on this information. But please consider, in the end, the user is much more efficient and effective in taking decisions compared to all other concepts I introduced. And all these dashboards, the guided analytics dashboard, can be designed in any way you want. So you can create the design as you want. You can define the flow as you want. You can define what information is shown in which way as you want. You can start small and then extend the dashboard step by step by adding more and more information, adding more data sources. And this is why I like this kind of guided analytics dashboard, because they provide you, on the one hand, a easy or support an easy engagement with data. On the other hand, they can just grow over time to provide more and more details. Whereas, of course, the KPI dashboard is great if you just want to provide a huge organization with a snapshot of the current situation and want to make sure everyone is on the same page. The reporting dashboard is very well suited for people who really want to read the entire book and get a deep understanding, but it might be less interesting for frequent updates because you have to go through all the information again and again. Data discovery is just for experts. Too many people, and that is my experience, are very, very easily lost in data, do misinterpretation. So this is really just for experts. And the guided analytics dashboard tries to combine all three concepts in a very, very efficient way and allows you to really help your users to get the picture first, but then step by step drill into what's really causing this issue so that they can easily take actions and start executing them, investigating or discovering insights. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer further questions. So I have some questions in my chat box. So the numbers are, so one question is how easy it is to update the numbers. Very, very easy. So as soon as the data is available, you can just upload and update the data. And after this happening, everyone has access to the latest data. So all the concepts I introduced are suitable for even hourly updates. So some customers want to do hourly updates. Well, I don't really see a purpose for that, but daily updates are more and more common, or weekly updates. So that is pretty easy to do. Just new data. We can even use an API to a data collecting system, and then, for instance, every night the data is collected from the collecting system and imported into the dashboard system to introduce the latest results the next day. Yes, the drill down, so all the traffic light system I showed, of course, change automatically depending on thresholds. So you can set the threshold. The threshold can be different from country to country because that's sometimes very important that different countries have different thresholds. So that is doable. And of course, you can, if you want, especially when you look at things over time, you can add a significance test. so that you can see if statistical differences are really there, or if it's just not significant. I would be careful with all this kind of sick tests, especially when you talk to a broader audience, because in many cases they struggle with understanding significant testing. Then I have questions about the software. What does the back end of the software look like? I would suggest that you speak to one of our experts and get a very, very deep understanding of how the system works, how it pulls together multiple data sources, and how you can create the dashboard I show you. So that takes maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes, so that is out of the scope today. But really, please feel free to go to daprc.com and request a demonstration, and we are very happy to help you and introduce you to all the details of the system. One question is, okay, what do we do if the base size is much smaller? Yes, you're absolutely right. The good thing with our system is that we also have base size limits included in our system, so that is one of the only systems that can do that from scratch or from the very first beginning. So whenever you filter, there's always a risk that you, of course, filter and that the underlying respondents are too low, so the base size is too low. And our system allows you to take two options. One is hiding. As a result, case, for instance, the base size is below 10, or for instance, putting a star beside the value to alert that the base size is low. So both options can be applied, and that is a very, very, very important point, especially in market research. And by the way, this is also a reason why I would be very, very careful with data discovery dashboards. They normally provide you a lot of filter options and compare options, and it's very, very likely that you, when you apply several filters, that you get into the base size limit issue. And then, of course, people might misinterpret information because most of the data discovery dashboards do not support a base size limit. For this purpose, we have a very, very good cross-tab application that allows you to slice and dice the information as you want, but also applies, again, all the base size limits. So that were more or less all the questions I have received so far. I hope that I haven't missed anyone. So one question is what kind of dashboard is used or what software is used. It's not Microsoft Power BI. I, of course, appreciate our competitor, but I would say Microsoft Power BI is more into data discovery than guided analytics. So in this case, we have to use, or I always use daprc, of course, because daprc provides the best and most flexible way to create guided analytics dashboards. Whereas maybe Microsoft Power BI is also very good in data discovery. So I think that's all for today. So if I don't get any further questions or have missed questions. Okay, so there are no more questions. So thanks a lot for attending today. Please feel free to go to daprc.com and speak to an expert, get more insights, reach out to me, of course, if you have content-related questions or if you would like to get some advice. Just drop me an email, and I'm happy to answer the questions after that session. We will, as announced at the beginning, of course, also introduce the video and some further information. And have a great day, a good week, rest of the week, and hopefully we talk soon. Thanks so much.